No question is a silly question. That is something that we always resonate in our workplaces, in our university or school life. But what does this actually mean? Sometimes when people talk about things like critical thinking, things like knowledge, things like research, we give extra weight into them so that we think it is nothing to do with all the individuals on this planet Earth. But it is a bit more than that. It is something that we have to have in our lives to find happiness, to differentiate happiness, and then find the best of the resolutions for us to face the days to come, weeks to come, months and years to come. So, in this journey, we're going to find out what is critical thinking and how we can actually understand the elements of critical thinking, a bit of a background and history about it, and then we're going to achieve the better outcomes at the end of this video. So stay tuned. At the end of this video, we will make a start to think that we know nothing. But that mentality is for a better reason. For us to find the theories and the ground behind it, we have to go back in time. If you go back in time, you will realize there were so many centuries ago, so many stories, so many people approached the matter of knowledge. And they made assumptions in the back of the head with the content that they were aware of. They had the knowledge, they were the philosophers. But I think the modern day philosophy, according to the history, was created by the logics and the philosophies of Socrates. But Socrates' thinking was a bit different than the previous predecessors. The reason I say that is when it comes to Socrates, he never believed he's a philosopher. And he always wanted to question the situations. Now, we need to understand one thing. When you question people, it is not a comfort zone. So it is so hard to convince people to come to the common ground when you are questioning. But the right questions, the right answers will lead us to get better evidence. It is like when someone expresses that because of your virtuous nature, I love you. Then just asking that question, how do you understand virtue? And how do you understand and express love? These understandings, these definitions will help us to make a better dialogue, to come up with a better resolution, to understand, do they actually have that knowledge that they are accredited for? But he believed in one thing. If you are a philosopher, you have to question. You have to start from the point that you believe that you don't know nothing. But the time passes by. The student of Socrates, Plato, also believed in the same theory. But apart from that, the ethical thinking was also brought into the conversation. So when it comes to ethical conversation, it's having that access to the existing knowledge and then at the same time asking the questions to understand the capacity of the person that we are having the dialogue with. And on top of that, we have to muster the courage to save the resolution so that people can ethically access to our opinions, how we came up to some of the decisions, how we came up with some of the outcomes. Now, that critical thinking, that critical knowledge was passed on to the next generation. So Aristotle took over that knowledge. When Aristotle took over that knowledge, his student was Alexander the Great. So Alexander was able to dominate the world. While he was dominating the world, every time he used his brain to articulate the strategies to conquer the world. So my approach to critical thinking got 6 steps that we need to follow to be perfect and have a life we lead with more productivity. So when it comes to these 6 factors, I strongly think we need to formulate the right questions. We need to do our research so that we have a better understanding what is the existing knowledge. And once that is done, the application, how we can apply that knowledge and formulate better outcomes. Once that is done, how we can understand the implications of the process that we are using. And once the implications are found out, how we can observe with opinion of my friends or my work colleagues, so that I have second opinions for the solution that I have applied. And on top of that, the whole purpose of this channel is all about making a better version of myself and yourself. So if that's the case, in other words, we want to make version 2.0 of ourselves. So when it comes to critical thinking, the most important thing is you don't subscribe to the face value of the situations or information. Instead of giving a weight to the face values, you take the substantial facts from an existing situation and you formulate right questions. Like, for general use of critical thinking, we need to formulate a question that is understandable by everyone. So, including myself, we always think, you know what, I need to start a diet plan. So, if I'm starting a diet plan, the most important question for me is, am I doing it because of the rest of the people are doing it? Am I doing it because my best friend is doing? Or what is the purpose of my diet plan? And when you find out, is it because of the nutrition? Is it because of weight loss? Or is it because you need more energy at work? Then you can create a clear path to formulate that question. The question would be, for me to gain energy, I would like to start dieting, but what is my best option? Now, when you have a question like that, you can break it down to subsections and you can approach that question in a logical way so that you will find better answers. Next step would be research or information gathering. So that is the moment we brainstorm. This might be a teamwork where we approach our team and ask questions, or you go to a subject matter expert. As an example, in our first instance, we took the dieting plan. And if the dieting plan is the goal, and once we formulate the right questions and sub-questions, we go to the right person. So in that example, I would say we can go to a doctor or the general practitioner to get a diet plan. So once that is done, we have got substantial information. This is not blind optimism, so that we know what was happening around the world. So if you are a student, a critical thinking would be an amazing thing to have. Once you start your topic, you can go into internet, you can go into different sources of information, and then you can find your knowledge. Once you find that knowledge, what that brings is not the face value of the information, other people's opinions, the facts, and then you can critically evaluate, are they matching exactly to the topic that you are covering? Application is the next step. When it comes to the right questions that we have formulated and we have the research done, then the application would be the place where we can find the actual outcomes. As an example, let's say when you have research knowledge, when you have a background of the situation, how productive it can be, how helpful it can be. So take as an example about Bitcoins. So when it comes to Bitcoins, I have a good friend of mine. So this was a few months ago. He was asked to sell something, and then in return he was told more than the pounds, he will be paid in Bitcoins. Now, people who are aware about the exchanges and transactions of Bitcoins, it'll make more sense to them. But my friend had a bit of understanding, but he didn't do his research. So on the day of the sale, then he was told like the item will be picked up, but then the money will be transferred later. But he didn't have a proper idea how that money will actually land in his account. And at the same time, when we look on the day of the sale, we realize in the UK there is no legally binded approach. So like Socrates said, The fourth element of this approach will always help you to be a better version of yourself. Approach everything with that understanding you know nothing about it. I know nothing about it. In that way, we will be faced to look into all the options, the 360-degree version of the problem, research, and application. So, take this as an example. I am not talking any political things what are happening in the UK, or am I? So there was this land long time ago, let's call it La La Land. La La Land. So La La Land had a promising prime minister. Because of some reason he had to leave, and when the time came, there was another election in the party to choose the next prime minister. So the biggest promise of one of them prime ministers was to have a big tax cut during a time of inflation. Now, the issue is, we as the voters, we have to critically think what are the implications of giving too many tax cuts in a time the country is going through inflation. I tell you one thing, that's why we are in pain now. Once we go through the first 4 processes of applying that knowledge, raising the right questions, and do our research, application, and then understanding the implications, the next important thing is making sure that everyone's coming on board with the idea that you are going to implement. In a school environment, in an office environment, it is so hard to bring people to the common ground. But try to explain the theory behind it, what is the support mechanisms, and what are the channels that they can reach out for help available for them. So in that way, you can bring everyone to the common ground. But above all, remember one thing. When you use critical thinking, unless you are selling ice cream, you can't make everyone happy. That's a reality. So that's a ground level truth. Unless you don't sell ice cream, you can't make everyone happy. But make sure you approach this in a sensible way. Try to reach out to people, extend your support, extend your help. So in that way, you can rally people behind you. And the rest of the people who hold a grudge on you will also rally behind you at some point. Remember, everyone would like to embrace a piece of success. Now you have followed the first 5 steps. The next up and the final step would be to record it. Record what you have done. Leave your footprint for the generations to come. Just like Einstein did. Just like Socrates passed it on to Plato, and Plato to Aristotle, and then from Aristotle, a generation of people learned through Alexander the Great and the Romans. So always make sure you leave a record of your resolution so that the next person can start from where you finished. Now you know how to be a critical thinker, and at the same time, you know if you only sell ice cream, you can make everyone happy. So make sure you approach people, you ask right questions, and at the end of the day, that is for a better outcome. Now, let me recap our conversation and dialogue with one note, which goes back to 1922, Imperial Hotel in Tokyo, in Japan. So there was a bellboy. Usually the bellboys get a tip. The person that he was servicing that night was none other than the greatest person ever to live on the face of this planet, Albert Einstein. The modern day bearer of that torch of the generations of Socrates. But instead of giving a tip to the bellboy, he gave something to his hand. And that was 2 notes. One note is really important for our conversation. And that said, lead a modest life, ask less questions, be less critical. You will lead a happy life. And the other note said, there is nothing you cannot achieve with your courage and critical thinking. So think which path you would like to take. And I promise you, we're going to have another conversation on another day, how to lead a happy life. But if you have growth mindset, make sure you embrace critical thinking. Above all, like Socrates, like Aristotle, like Einstein, always think one thing, and that is, you know nothing. I know nothing. If you like the channel, subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you can stay tuned and keep in touch. I'll catch you in the days to come with another video.